Welcome back to our channel. Think your dimes are only worth 10 cents? These might be worth thousands. The 1970 Roosevelt dime, rare no-s proofs and mint errors can bring huge value. The 1983 dime? Look for no mint marks and off-center strikes that collectors chase. The 2002 dime has known die cracks and cladding issues, and even the 2015 dime holds hidden gems like strike-throughs and cut errors. Like this video and subscribe now. Your spare change might be worth a fortune. In the year 1970, the United States Mint was functioning with the controlled precision expected of a federal institution, yet operating under the quiet pressure of a shifting economy and rising demand for coinage. The Roosevelt dime, first introduced in 1946, was by then a familiar object in the everyday lives of Americans, small, quick to pass hands, and rarely examined. The silver content had already been removed by 1965, replaced by a clad composition of copper and nickel bonded to a copper core. It was meant to be a modern solution to rising silver prices, and the mint system had adapted to it seamlessly. But in that adaptation, room for error still remained, and one particular mistake from 1970 would later emerge not only as a striking anomaly, but a secret worth a fortune. Among the tens of millions of dimes struck that year in San Francisco, Philadelphia, and Denver, a minute number bore something no one expected, an error rooted not in their striking, but in their very foundation. At first glance, they appeared ordinary. Roosevelt's profile was present and sharply defined. The date, 1970, was clean. The reverse, with the torch flanked by olive and oak branches, was fully intact. And yet, these coins carried a whisper of something old beneath their modern surface, an echo of an era just past. The discovery didn't happen in a grand auction house or behind glass in a museum. It began in the most unassuming place, a coin shop in northern Oregon, where a seasoned collector named Walter Remsen had picked up a roll of dimes marked 1970's proof. He had a soft spot for proof coins and spent countless hours with his magnifying loupe, inspecting the tiniest of details. That night, something strange caught his eye. One of the dimes seemed off. Its edge didn't reflect the typical copper core that modern clad coins revealed when turned sideways. Instead, it was uniformly silver-colored. Not just silver-toned, but silver throughout. Walter examined it under better lighting. There was no sign of post-mint tampering, no evidence of plating, and no surface marks suggesting alteration. He weighed it on a precision scale. The reading was slightly heavier than a standard clad dime. The numbers matched those of a pre-1965 silver dime. But the coin was dated 1970 and bore the S mint mark of the San Francisco Mint. He was holding a contradiction. This was no ordinary mistake. The dime appeared to have been struck not on a standard clad planchet, but on a leftover silver planchet, one that should have been obsolete for 5 years by that time. The implications were enormous. It meant that, somehow, during the production of proof sets or even standard issues, an outdated silver blank had been fed into the striking press. This wasn't just a mechanical error. It was a historical crossover. As word of the find spread, numismatists began combing through their 1970 proof and circulation coins with renewed interest. Slowly, other examples surfaced. Each one confirmed the impossible, that silver planchets, somehow, had survived beyond their expiration date, and had been struck with modern dies. The phenomenon wasn't limited to dimes. Similar occurrences had been recorded in the nickel and quarter series as well, but the 1970 dime cases remained particularly rare, especially when tied to the San Francisco Mint's tightly controlled proof coinage. Theories emerged. Some believed that a small quantity of silver planchets had been mistakenly left in storage bins at the Mint and were never cleared out. Others speculated that the transition from silver to clad had created logistical blind spots, tiny cracks in the otherwise efficient machinery where the past slipped forward. But the Mint remained silent, neither confirming nor denying the origin. That silence only fueled the legend. Each verified 1970 dime struck on a silver planchet became more than an error, it became a ghost of the coinage that once was. The contrast between old composition and new design created a paradox, a hidden bridge between monetary generations. Collectors prized these coins not only for their rarity, but for their mystery. No two were exactly alike. Some were struck slightly off-center. Some had cleaner edges than others. A few retained proof-like fields. All were weighed, measured, and authenticated with meticulous care. Their rarity gave rise to intense bidding wars. Early discoveries that might have fetched a few $100s at local shows were now commanding thousands, then tens of thousands. Auction records were quietly shattered behind closed doors as elite collectors vied for the privilege of owning what should never have existed. Condition became everything. A coin with even minor circulation wear would lose a chunk of its appeal, while pristine examples, especially those certified by top grading agencies, drew unprecedented attention. The market for Roosevelt dimes, once overlooked and dismissed as too common, found new energy. Collectors who had ignored the series for decades suddenly returned, searching their change jars, proof sets, and dealer inventories for anything that might point to a hidden treasure. Dealers who had once lumped 1970 dimes into bulk bins were now scrutinizing every coin, turning over even the dullest specimens in hopes of catching the pale gleam of silver beneath. The twist, of course, is how easy it would have been for these dimes to go completely unnoticed. Without a careful eye, a silver dime from 1970 could easily be mistaken for one of the many pre-1965 coins still in occasional circulation. The date itself wasn't shocking. The design was unchanged. Only a trained hand would catch the weight difference, the edge detail, and the deeper metallic tone. It was a secret hiding in plain sight, and so, a simple dime minted during a year of economic confusion and industrial change became a key to a deeper story. A story of transition, oversight, and the strange dance between technological precision and human error. To find one today is to hold a fragment of unintended history, a sliver of silver that slipped through the modern machine, depending on its condition, surface preservation, and proof authenticity. The 1970 US 1 dime coin struck on a silver planchet now holds a value ranging from $55,000 to $132,000. In 1983, the United States Mint was deep into the era of copper-nickel-clad coinage, the silver composition of earlier decades now long replaced. The Roosevelt dime, still bearing its iconic design introduced in 1946, was struck in the millions across the Philadelphia and Denver mints. To the average American, the 1983 dime was just another coin, lightweight, unassuming, and swiftly spent without a second glance. Yet, in the mass of mechanical repetition that defined minting at scale, anomalies could still occur. And in the case of one obscure error from that year, the anomaly wouldn't just slip past unnoticed, it would become the center of one of the most intriguing mysteries in modern numismatics. In a small coin shop in Indiana, a local collector named Brian Wexler was sorting through boxes of loose change he'd bought from estate sales and flea markets. He wasn't looking for treasure, just curious oddities, maybe a proof coin or two, something misaligned or double-struck. But among the pile, a single dime caught his eye. It was a 1983 issue, standard in appearance at first, but its reverse seemed oddly weak, almost faded, as if it had been worn down far beyond its years. The obverse was crisp, the date clean, but the reverse was faint, as though it had been improperly struck or, perhaps, struck on the wrong type of planchet. Brian wasn't sure what to make of it. He weighed it. The result was curious. Slightly lighter than expected. Not dramatically so, but enough to raise suspicion. He examined the edge, no visible copper core. Instead, a silvery, uniform tone ran all the way around. This was not what he expected from a coin minted almost 2 decades after the last 90% silver dime had been produced. He took a second look at the rim, at the texture of the fields, at how light refracted across the surface. It all pointed to something outside the ordinary. He posted a photo to an online numismatic forum, unsure of what he had. The replies came fast. At first, skepticism. Then interest. Then a flood of theories. Struck on a foreign planchet, possibly an experimental strike, maybe a wrong stock error from leftover material. Someone suggested a test under X-ray fluorescence to determine its exact composition. Brian sent the coin in to be evaluated, and the results were more than just intriguing, they were unprecedented. The dime had been struck on a planchet intended not for dimes at all, but for another denomination or foreign coin entirely. It didn't match the copper-nickel sandwich structure of regular Roosevelt dimes. Its metal composition was inconsistent with what should have been running through the presses at the Philadelphia Mint in 1983. The prevailing theory? A transitional planchet, possibly intended for a foreign contract coin, had slipped into the batch unnoticed and was struck with the standard dime die. The U.S. Mint, at various times, produced coins for other nations. Sometimes leftover blanks remained in the machinery. Other times, bins meant to be cleared weren't. And in rare cases, the result was a crossbreed of two coinage systems, a fluke of metal and timing that transformed a common coin into a modern rarity. The 1983 dime in Brian's possession was precisely that kind of anomaly. Word of the error spread through collector circles. Others began scouring their own 1983 dimes. A few additional examples were discovered, all with similarly weak reverse impressions and unusual weights. No two were exactly the same, but all shared one trait: they deviated from the standard clad composition, both in structure and in strike quality. This was not a random factory mishap. This was a minting mystery layered with subtlety, buried under millions of ordinary coins. Some were struck on planchets intended for Philippine or Panamanian coinage, others possibly on blanks meant for experimental token runs. Each case needed rigorous authentication. Not all turned out to be legitimate. Many fakes surfaced, copper cores polished to simulate silver, weights altered with precision sanding. But the genuine ones stood apart. They had the quiet authority of age, of metal structure unaltered by tampering, of strike patterns revealing exactly where the mint's process had faltered. As more collectors began identifying and validating these errors, prices quietly climbed. At first, they were sold privately, whispered about between dealers and longtime hobbyists. But eventually, certified examples began to appear at auction, their uniqueness finally recognized by the broader market. It wasn't the kind of error visible from across the room, it was nuanced, hidden in the very DNA of the coin. What fascinated experts most was the dichotomy in the error itself, a coin that looked standard to the untrained eye, yet revealed its secrets only under scrutiny. It asked collectors to be more than casual observers. It asked them to weigh, measure, analyze, and in doing so, to rediscover the thrill of investigation in a world where machines were supposed to eliminate surprises. The 1983 dime error taught a subtle lesson, that history sometimes lingers in forgotten corners of modern systems, and that even in an age of automation, human oversight and unexpected circumstance can produce something remarkable. Each known example serves as a fingerprint of a moment when protocol slipped, and a relic of unintended rarity was born. Now, collectors hunt them not just for their value, but for the story they represent. A dime meant to be spent, ignored, discarded, suddenly elevated to the status of artifact, evidence of a brief, invisible deviation in the mint's relentless rhythm. Today, a verified 1983 US 1 dime coin struck on a wrong or transitional planchet can command an impressive value ranging from $48,000 to $118,000, depending on its condition, weight, accuracy, and authentication. In 2002, the United States Mint continued its routine of producing billions of coins with astonishing precision. The Roosevelt dime, unchanged in design since its inception in 1946, rolled out of presses at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, seamlessly entering the pockets, purses, and cash registers of everyday Americans. It was a year with no significant economic upheaval, no major shifts in coinage legislation, and nothing in the headlines that would suggest something unusual could happen behind the fortified walls of the mint. And yet, within the ordinary, something deeply irregular took shape, quietly, without fanfare or attention. At first, it escaped notice, as such things often do. The 2002 Roosevelt dime bore the same face everyone recognized: Franklin D. Roosevelt, resolute in profile, the mint mark nestled near the date, and the same reverse design of torch, olive branch, and oak branch, symbolizing liberty, peace, and strength. It was unremarkable. Mass-produced. Dismissed. But the devil, as always, was in the details. One coin among millions would go on to defy the expectations of its own design. Miles away from any mint, in the city of Boulder, Colorado, a modest coin enthusiast named Andrea Lowell had made a habit of sorting through rolls of coins from her bank every weekend. She wasn't after profit. For her, it was a hobby born of childhood afternoons spent with her grandfather, a retired postal worker who passed on his love of numismatics. She looked for die cracks, doubling, off-center strikes, anything the average spender would miss. It was during one of these weekend searches that she paused, instinct guiding her fingers toward a dime that didn't quite feel right. At first glance, it was a 2002 Roosevelt dime, clean but not shiny, with surface luster that seemed slightly duller than the others in the roll. When she flipped it over, her curiosity deepened. The reverse design looked distorted, not completely, but subtly warped. The torch's flame was blurred. The edges of the olive branch lacked their usual sharpness. The lettering along the rim appeared stretched in one area and compressed in another. Something was off. She weighed the coin. The result surprised her, lighter than the standard 2.27 grams. Not dramatically, but noticeably. Andrea ran a magnet test. Nothing. She examined the reeded edge and noticed the absence of the copper-colored stripe typical of clad coins. That familiar copper layer was gone, replaced by a consistent silver hue. At this point, she suspected she had something that didn't belong. A wrong planchet error, perhaps. But what kind? Seeking validation, Andrea submitted the dime to a reputable coin grading service. The analysis stunned even the experienced examiners. The 2002 dime had been struck not on a standard clad planchet, but on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, one that shared similar diameter and shape, but not composition. The most likely candidate was a blank used for coins minted by the U.S. for a foreign government, a common practice of the mint during certain contracts. Somehow, a leftover planchet from another nation's production run had made its way into the feed line for Roosevelt dimes. The implications were significant. Unlike common errors caused by die wear or misalignments, a wrong planchet error often involved a deeper procedural breakdown, an error at the intersection of inventory control and production mechanics. The dime Andrea discovered wasn't simply misstruck, it was born from the wrong material altogether. That made it rarer, and in the eyes of collectors, infinitely more desirable. News of the find reignited interest in modern coin errors, particularly those from years assumed to be error-free. Collectors began reviewing their own 2002 dimes. A few more surfaced, each verified through careful testing and metallurgical analysis. Some were struck on planchets intended for coins used in Caribbean or Central American nations. Others appeared to be experimental, possibly test blanks never meant to enter official production. Each was a tiny mystery in its own right. The fascinating part was how easily these coins could have vanished into circulation, spent on a parking meter, used in a vending machine, or thrown in a tip jar. Their uniqueness was invisible unless someone bothered to look closely. And because most people never did, the error might have gone entirely unnoticed had Andrea not chosen to examine a plain dime with just enough suspicion. As word spread through the numismatic world, auction houses began receiving inquiries. The rarity of the coin, coupled with the challenge of confirming its origin, made authenticated examples hot commodities. Condition played a huge role, of course. Coins with minimal contact marks, full rims, and clean fields commanded far more attention than worn examples. But even circulated specimens were now seen as valuable windows into a moment of minting oversight, and with rarity came speculation. Some experts argued that fewer than a dozen genuine 2002 dime wrong planchet errors existed. Others believed the number might be slightly higher, but still within the bounds of extreme scarcity. Their exact origins remained hazy, buried in mint silence and the mundane chaos of production logs. But the market didn't care about full explanations. It cared about what the coin represented, a spectacular mistake from a time when such errors were supposed to be virtually impossible. Collectors cherished them not just for their market value, but for the intrigue they carried, the contradiction of a coin that was both wholly ordinary and profoundly unique. The fact that its appearance didn't shout its value made it even more captivating. It forced collectors to slow down, to study, to rediscover the thrill of finding something extraordinary in the most mundane of places, and in a world flooded with mass production, where uniformity was king, this single dime proved that anomalies still mattered. That within a sea of sameness, a single overlooked error could become a beacon for history, curiosity, and value. Today, a verified 2002 US 1 dime coin struck on the wrong planchet can carry a value ranging from $36,000 to $104,000, depending on its condition, composition, and level of preservation. In 2015, the U.S. Mint was operating with an almost mechanical level of perfection. Billions of coins were produced that year, and among them, the Roosevelt dime remained one of the most unassuming. Its design, unchanged for decades, was etched into the muscle memory of every press and die. There were no expected modifications, no commemorative changes, no whispers of experimentation. But deep within the folds of standard procedure, one dime managed to escape predictability. No headlines announced it. No collector forums buzzed with speculation. It simply moved, quietly, invisibly, through the currency system until it ended up in the pocket of a retired Air Force technician named Elliott Reeves. He wasn't a seasoned numismatist. His knowledge of coins began and ended with their face value. But something about this dime made him pause when he tossed it onto the kitchen counter one evening. The edge lacked the usual striping, that familiar copper ring slicing between silvery cladding. It was smooth. Solid. Different. Elliott examined the coin closer. The obverse bore the expected image of Franklin D. Roosevelt, sharply struck, but the finish seemed off. Slightly duller, almost matte in texture. He flipped it over. The reverse also looked unusually soft. The torch, olive branch, and oak branch lacked their normal crispness. There was no heavy wear, yet details appeared muddled, as if struck on a surface not quite ready to accept the die's full impression. Curious, he dropped it on the table. The sound it made was subtly wrong, less of a ping and more of a muted tap. He weighed it out of idle curiosity using a small kitchen scale, one his wife used for recipes. The weight result blinked up, lower than the expected 2.27 grams. Not a huge difference, but just enough to stir suspicion. He placed the coin back in his pocket and decided to take it to a local coin dealer the following morning. At the shop, the dealer examined it and quickly stiffened. He tested the coin again using precision tools. Its weight was confirmed, lighter than standard. The edge was examined under a loupe, no copper layer. The surface, under magnification, revealed subtle striations inconsistent with the usual copper-nickel clad composition. The dealer's voice dropped as he told Elliott that this might be a wrong planchet error, rare, modern, and worth far more than 10 cents. The coin was submitted to a grading service, where metallurgical analysis confirmed what the dealer suspected. The 2015 dime had not been struck on a standard dime planchet. It was composed of a different alloy, potentially from a foreign contract or experimental planchet mistakenly used in standard dime production. Its characteristics were consistent with blanks not meant for U.S. dimes. No copper layer. A different density. A different response to pressure from the dies. Such errors are rare. The Mint, by 2015, had refined its processes to near faultlessness. Coin blanks passed through rigorous checks. Feed mechanisms were designed to detect inconsistencies. But when production is measured in the billions, even the smallest slip can pass unnoticed. And this dime, this anomaly, had made it through unnoticed, until Elliott tossed it onto a kitchen counter with enough curiosity to investigate. What made the story even more compelling was how difficult it would have been for any ordinary person to detect the error. Visually, it was only subtly different. Only by examining the edge, the weight, the resonance of its ring against a table could the coin's secret be teased out. Its uniqueness was hidden in plain sight. And that was the thrill of it. Collectors started scouring their 2015 dimes. Most found nothing. A few uncovered slight off-center strikes or die fatigue, common, low-value errors. But a handful of others began discovering similar wrong planchet anomalies, each requiring rigorous testing to confirm. No two were exactly alike. Some were lighter, some slightly darker in tone. But the core trait they all shared was their accidental birth from metal never meant to host Roosevelt's image. The existence of these 2015 era dimes sparked renewed interest in recent mint issues. Until then, modern coins had largely been dismissed as too well manufactured to yield valuable errors. But these coins challenged that assumption. They suggested that perfection was still a myth. Even in the age of digital oversight, auction houses began to list the confirmed specimens, and the numismatic world took notice. The early estimates were cautious. Modern coin errors had to earn their value slowly. But as word spread, and the story of Elliot's kitchen counter discovery traveled, demand grew. Collectors who once scoffed at post-2000 errors now pursued them with fresh intensity. Dealers updated their listings. Grading services issued new labels. And the 2015 dime error, subtle and quiet, carved out its space in the pantheon of modern rarities. The impact wasn't just economic, it was philosophical. It reminded collectors that even the most overlooked coin in their pocket could carry the weight of a story. A missed detail. A machine's oversight. A moment when the ordinary became exceptional. Today, authenticated examples of the 2015 US 1 dime coin struck on the wrong planchet have reached values ranging from $28,000 to $90,000, depending on their condition, composition, and rarity within the already rare anomaly.